Alright guys, today I'm going to show you how to shade using charcoal, and we're going to learn two different ways to do that. So you're going to need your charcoal pencils, HB, 2B, 4B, and 6B, a kneaded eraser, and your pink eraser. Mine's white because that's what I have here. So we'll keep those to the side, and you're going to be drawing in your sketchbook. So in your sketchbook, the very first thing I want you to do is to draw 4 long rectangles. You can use a pen or pencil or charcoal to draw these. They don't have to fill up the whole page, but you should make them big enough. They shouldn't be like that big. All right, in the first one, I want you to just use your HB charcoal pencil, which is what I have in my hand, and make a value scale just by changing the pressure and the layers. So I'm going to hold it down like this, not like a pencil, or not like I'm writing. I'm going to hold it like this. I'm going to go lightly. So I filled it in with one shade, and then I'm going to come back in. I'm not going to go all the way to the end. I'm going to start layering, and I'm putting a little bit more pressure. I go to the next one. I'm not going to start all the way to the end. More pressure and more layers. And down here, I'm just pushing as hard as I can with the HB. All right, HB right here. And then in the next one, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to use different pencils to get different results. So I'm going to start with my HB. I'll put my HB down and get my 2B. Go from 2B to 4B. Then from 4B to 6B. And I can come in here and smooth out those layers. So this is this one, I changed the pressure. And I layered. This one, I changed the pencil. I kept the same layering. All right, and the next one, I want you to start on your dark end, and you're going to just use one pencil and get about a third of the way through it dark. And then I want you to take your blending stump or a tissue, or you can just use your fingers, and pull the darkness down. And blend it nice and smooth. You can always go back in and add more dark if you rub away too much. So this one I'm going to call it rubbing. And then lastly, for your last rectangle, you're going to use one of your charcoal sticks, which I have right here. And you're just going to color in the whole thing with your nice dark charcoal, the compressed kind, not the vine charcoal. We're looking for a good medium dark gray. So this is not what I want. I want to, after I get the base layer down, come in and erase or smear it in with my finger. And due to COVID, we can't blow this away, and I don't want you to smear it. So instead, just kind of tap it off like that. All right, we have two erasers here. We have our pink eraser and we have our kneaded eraser. We're going to start with our hard eraser. We're going to come in and erase to get that lighter value. The hard eraser will erase more than the gum eraser, but it also leaves harsh edges where the gum eraser doesn't. So I just did the first third. Now I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and I'm going to come in and I'm going to get my midtones. So I'm not really pushing all that hard on my eraser. For this one I was. For this I'm not really. I'm just using this more as a blending tool. And now I'm going to push even lighter. When your eraser starts to look like this, then you can just pull it and fold it in on itself until you have a fresh eraser to work with. This, when your eraser starts to look black, just get a piece of clean paper. I have scrap paper by the paper cutter, and you can erase it and it'll erase clean. This method is called add erase. This is my favorite way to do charcoal. So I want you to do this in your sketchbook. And when you're all done, we're going to come back and we're going to draw some spheres. All right, so we talked about how every three-dimensional form that you make is going to have 5 different shades of gray. You're going to have the highlight, which is where the light hits. You're going to have your mid-tone, which is going from light gray all the way to a medium dark gray. Core shadow is going to be almost the darkest you're going to get. Remember, down at the bottom of your form, there's the reflected light. So your core shadow, if the light was coming from here, where the light can't hit anymore, that's where your core shadow is. And a reflected light is just whatever's reflecting off of the surface that your object is sitting on. A lot of people forget the cast shadow. You got to make sure we remember that this is going to be your darkest value that you get. So we're going to do 2 different spheres. First, we're going to use our HB pencil, and we're going to start by just drawing the outline of a circle. Now we're not going to draw on here where that highlight is, but we're just going to remember this part right here, it's going to stay nice and white. And with charcoal, the only way to make sure something stays white is to leave it alone. So I'm going to take my pencil and ever so lightly, I'm going to start adding value. Because this is the first layer, it doesn't really matter what direction we go in. The really nice thing about charcoal is that it blends really super easily and you get really dark really fast. I'm taking my HB and just filling in the whole circle except for where my highlight is. because we don't have so many in between shades with our pencils, with our charcoal pencils, there is going to be some gradient lines that will smooth out with our finger. Don't ever do that with your pencils, but with charcoal, it's okay. It's kind of the look that charcoal is designed to make. Okay, so I've got the whole thing covered in HB. Now I'm going to get my 2B, and I'm going to come down just a smidge, and I'm going to start adding my values. I'm going to blend that line in so we don't see it in the end. Now that we're starting to get into the final values, we want to follow the shape that we're adding the value to. So in this case, we're going to be using a circular line. If I were doing a square or a cube, I would be doing back and forth. Triangle, I would be following kind of this kind of shape. So it's all about whatever shape you're wanting to end with. You're obviously not going to color round in a cube. I'm going to grab my 4B. I'm going to get in here with my 4B. I'm about halfway in right now. Notice that my lines are going circular. I'm not going across like this. And really quick, before I add my core shadow, I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to start in the light area. I'm going to blend this out, start to smudge it. I want to do this before I add the core value because the core value is so dark. I don't want it to make this area appear darker. Okay, I've got a decent enough sphere, but it's not done yet. So I'm going to take my 6B, and the 6B is just where the light's not hitting. So I'm going to just come in here like a crescent. Kind of like a smiley face, and fill that guy in. And then I can use my finger and blend out those edges so that the edges aren't quite so harsh. I can also use my pencil doing small circular motions, and that will blend out the edges as well. Okay, so I've got a decent sphere here. I'm not finished yet. I need to do my cast shadow. My light's coming from this direction, so that means my cast shadow is going to be over here. Notice the reflected light so that there's a difference between the core shadow and the cast shadow. I'm going to come in here with my finger, or your blending stick, or a tissue, whatever you feel like using. I'm going to blend it up. Alright, so this is pretty messy, and I personally think that shadows are kind of fuzzy on the outside. So I think being fuzzy around the outside of your shadow is perfectly fine. But being fuzzy around the outside of your sphere, not so much. So before you turn something in, you want to come back in and erase around it carefully because you don't want to get rid of your spherical shape. You want to get rid of those smudgy fingerprints. And this is where fixative will really help too in the long run. Charcoal moves very easily. So if you use fixative, it will make it so that it doesn't move quite so easily. Can't blow in the time of COVID, so we're going to tap it on the table. There's sphere number 1. And we'll call this traditional. Sphere number 2 is going to be a little atraditional. I'm going to take my stick. This is the compressed charcoal still, so we're not using that vine charcoal. The vine charcoal erases very easily, so it's really good for like marking in where you think something's going to be, but that you don't want to be the final outline of it yet. So that's like the sketching charcoal. I'm just smoothing this in so it's a nice even gray all the way through it. We don't want it to be black, so don't like, push really hard to get black, but you do want it to be pretty dark. And we don't need all of this extra dust. So there it goes. All right. So I'm going to, with my eraser, lightly draw in a circle. Okay. And then I'm going to also go ahead and give this a table, a place to be sitting, so that we know that it's grounded. Ideally, we're going to have a table on this side too. Everything should be grounded when we're drawing. So now let's change it up so the light is coming from a different direction. So we're going to have the light coming from this direction now. So I'm going to give it a little erase. Sorry if the table is shaking. So you guys can see where the light's coming from. And now this first third, what you have up here, we're going to erase instead of drawing lightly. So let's just come in here and lightly erase. If you make a mistake, you can always go back in and add some more value using your compressed charcoal. And this charcoal is still smudgy too, so you're going to have a harsh line, but that's okay. We can smudge it in. Okay, I want to get that highlight even lighter, so I'm going to erase really hard in there. And then I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to help me get some of those midtones. I'm going to also use this to help smudge around the outside. You don't have to use your eraser for this. You can use your blendy stick, but I have it in my hand, so I might as well. I'm not a big fan of the blendy sticks. All right, I have my lights erased, and I already started with my darks, my midtones. So now I need to come in and I need to add my darks. So just like we did a crescent over here, we're going to come back in and we're going to add a crescent here. And then we're going to smear it in. You may or may not have noticed I am changing my fingers when I'm blending so I can have a clean finger. You can also just wipe your hands on the side on your clean scrap paper. The compressed charcoal makes a lot of dust. I didn't quite give myself enough space, so I'm going to come over here, add some more. Okay, not done yet. I need my cast shadow. Light's over here, cast shadow is going to be down here. So I really like the add erase method because it's fast, and since it starts off so dark, it's easy to get the darks. people are usually pretty hesitant to go dark. All right, it looks decent, but it's still not done. So now I need to show off my sphere. So I'm going to, over here where it's dark, I'm going to come in and I'm going to just lightly erase. I can even use my kneaded eraser. I'm going to lightly erase over here just so that I can see my sphere and I can see the top of the table. And I'm going to blend that, of course, so it's not like a harsh line. Just want to get a nice light gray there. And I can come over here and make that a little lighter. And since the bottom of my sphere is so dark here, I want to make that cast shadow and that core shadow stand out. So I'm going to erase some of the table since the light's hitting over here anyway. All right, now it looks like a nice sphere. So when you're all finished, I would like you to please take a picture of both your traditional and your add erase spheres. And load them onto the Google Classroom. The assignment is called Charcoal Spheres. So you'll load a photo on there